Welcome to the Town Hall on Florida's Transportation Plan, Ensuring an Accessible Future in Florida, hosted by the Able Trust. My name is Guinevere Crum, Senior Vice President at the Able Trust, and I am glad you have joined us. We will kick off in just a moment, but a few reminders first. This discussion is being recorded and will be posted to the Able Trust website, streamed onto the Able Trust Facebook page, and replayed on the Florida channel. Closed captioning is available today and can be activated by clicking on the CC button on the Zoom toolbar and then choosing to see subtitles displayed or a transcript on the side of your screen. Speakers are generally limited to 4 minutes so that we can hear from as many individuals as possible today. Most importantly, we invite you to participate by posting in the chat box. Be sure to set your chat settings to reply to all participants. If you haven't already done so, take a moment now to introduce yourself to others online with your name and your organization if you are representing one today. There are 3 ways to participate in public comment on accessible transportation: on the chat box here, but also on social media. Post your comment, suggestions, questions, and stories with the hashtag AbleTrust to connect with us. We invite you to participate by email as well. Use the email address transportation@abletrust.org until September 30th to provide comment. So everyone listening live on September 2nd or on a replay, please know that we want to hear from you. Today's event is brought to you by the Able Trust. The Able Trust is dedicated to creating employment opportunities for Floridians with disabilities and advancing the mission of the Florida Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. Since created by the Florida Legislature in 1990, we have partnered with thousands of organizations, businesses, and individuals to create a stronger, more diverse, and inclusive workforce. Empowerment, education, and employment are the root cause and outcomes of the activities, partnerships, grants, and programs we support. The Able Trust has provided over $42 million in direct grants over the years, and this has been made possible by the generosity of the state of Florida, other foundations, community leaders, and individuals that have decided to invest in the future by supporting career development and employment placement for individuals with disabilities. To find out how you can also make such an investment to support the work of the Able Trust and to connect with all of our programming and resources, we invite you to join us online at www.abletrust.org. Today, we invite you to post about this discussion on social media with questions and comments online. Tag your comments with the hashtag AbleTrust to get connected with us. We are collecting these public comments until September 30th. To open the town hall this afternoon, I invite today's forum anchor and Able Trust President and CEO, Tony Carvajal, to the mic. Tony, the floor is yours.
The white wheelchair on a field of blue is an internationally recognized symbol for accessibility. On its face, it is a heartening sign, a recognition that everyone should have access to all that is available. But in many ways, this also signals that we live in a world designed with the notion of separate but equal. There is more we can do to plan for and ensure a truly accessible world, and today's conversation about Florida's transportation future is a step in that direction. We have assembled a broad range of stakeholders who will share a small slice of their transportation story. Admittedly, none will have enough time to dive deep, but we hope that the comments and advice by the presenters and those participating via live chat offer good guidance for future transportation plans. I don't know for sure what the town hall presenters will say. I suspect you will hear about hurdles, but I also bet that it won't be long before you hear another clear message. This is not about special treatment, but about working together to create a state that enables every Floridian to live, work, learn, play, prosper, and raise a family here. 1 in 4 individuals have some type of disability, a bit more than 5.
We'll get reconnected with Tony's audio in just a moment.
Put most bluntly to me when a colleague said that only 2 things made her disabled: biases and transportation. These two hurdles were hard to address because no matter her commitment to independence, these barriers were erected and maintained outside of her. I'm fortunate to work with and support an army of professionals and organizations committed to overcoming barriers by ensuring education, empowerment, and employment for individuals with disabilities. The Able Trust leverages grants, gifts, sponsorships, and insights to advance vocational rehabilitation, help the organizations that serve as helpers, and through our peer-to-peer business leadership exchange, the Able Network, we help companies grow their market opportunities, enhance accessibility, and prepare to offer meaningful and sustainable employment for those with visible and invisible disabilities. Transportation, like employment, is a path to community, connection, purpose, and independence. As I close, let me issue this challenge. Every time you see this sign, no matter where you are, evaluate the environment and its accessibility and all it took to get there and all it will take to move on. Don't just think about the parking spot or the bathroom stall, but about the entire commitment to mobility, from the front door of a person's home to the destination and back. Yes, ask if you could cross the street, fit through the door, find your way, but also consider whether a person with a disability could have gotten there the same way as you, independently. If it was a short trip, ask what pathways and systems you relied on with short notice to get there. If you traveled far, what intermodal networks made it possible, or not, to get across the state, or to an urban or rural location, or for that matter, just across the county line. Consider how the environment you are in would be for someone with challenges seeing or hearing, or mobility, language, sensory, or processing issues as they head to work, to school, to shop, to recreation, or home. What could we plan differently to ensure a world that allows the abilities and quality of life of every individual to be maximized? A successful transportation plan is not about designing for the disabled, rather about designing for all. Whatever access and user experience you would consider for Florida's visitors, consumers, employees, entrepreneurs, tourists, or business owners. Whatever commitment we make for motorists, cyclists, pedestrians, flyers, boaters, or commuters. Whatever plans are created for mobility, safety, business access, or innovation. Each of these should be intentionally grounded in what enables the greatest independence and opportunities for all Floridians and visitors, with or without a disability. Everything in our built world is a choice. What we must ask at the planning and the execution stage is, do we care enough to build for all, or do we continue to choose to segregate? I want to thank the Florida Transportation Plan Steering Committee for the opportunity to have each of the voices that follow tell their story. And we look forward to engaging with you as you continue to create access for Floridians with disabilities so that they can live, work, learn, play, prosper, and raise families here. Now, let me welcome Allison Stetner with the Florida Department of Transportation to tell us more about the FTP.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. I am Allison Stetner. I'm the Director of Policy Planning in FDOT up in Tallahassee. It's an honor to be here amongst you who are so committed to making our community a better place to live, more accessible for everyone. And I'm just thrilled to be able to listen today to some of your feedback and how we can make transportation more barrier-free for everyone to have access. I think Tony's opening remarks were excellent, and he's such a champion for the to improve our accessible climate and make sure that we have access for everyone to get to where they need to go. And today I'm going to tell you about the larger picture of how we get there, and that's through the Florida Transportation Plan. Next slide. I'm going to start off with a video, so hopefully this will run smoothly.
Did you know in the past 8 years, Florida's population has grown by more than 3 million? Did you know in the past 8 years, Florida's population has grown by more than 3 million people? And in the next 20 years, another 5 million people will join them.
Where are we all going to live? How will we move around, get to work, school, and where will we go on the weekends?
Yeah, and what about the 126 million visitors to Florida every year? That's like 6 times our population.
We better be ready.
And that is why we need you.
Hey, you!
And definitely you.
For the Florida Transportation Plan.
The FTP is the transportation plan for all of Florida. provides a vision for Florida's future and guides the transportation decision-making process.
But we're just scratching the surface. The FTP is much more.
Let's talk about a smarter Florida. Right now, there are over 800,000 college students like me enrolled at a Florida college or university.
And we're sharing rides, using new ways of travel like bike share and scooters, and adopting new technologies faster than ever before.
Technologies that will not just help move people, but will change businesses to deliver goods and services with greater safety, efficiency, and reliability.
Now, when tragedies happen or hurricanes strike, the plans you make now will help us rise up to be our best for each other and for Florida.
But the FTP that you make now isn't just about transportation, it's about our communities.
Because with so many people living in and visiting our state,
we have to put our best foot forward, and that means caring for everyone and everything that calls Florida home.
So take part.
Be a part.
Of the Florida Transportation Plan.
And give us your best, because in 25 years,
we just might be sitting where you are right now.
And something tells me that Florida will still be the best and brightest America has to offer.
So I don't know, that just gave me chills. I'm just so excited to be part of this vision plan so that we can improve our transportation system. But I want to tell you a little bit about what you just heard in the video, and that the Florida Transportation Plan is a plan for all of Florida. It's not just for the Florida Department of Transportation. I know that you see us working on it diligently, but really this is a plan for all of Florida. And it's about making sure that we get input from you to make sure that we are making the transportation system from our roadways to our ports, to airports, to our transit facilities accessible and equitable to all that use it. And this is our long range plan. So these are our vision, our guiding principles, and then we work into more detailed plans later, and I'll go a little bit into that in a second. But this provides the policy guidance for all transportation partners, not just the department, but also our local governments and our regional planning councils and our MPOs. They're all working to improve transportation for everyone. And these principles and this vision plan is the umbrella for all of those different agencies. So this establishes that policy framework for how we spend our state and federal dollars so that we're putting our money right where our goals are. Next slide, please. So we work with a very large steering committee, and you can see that there's a huge number of stakeholders. There's 34 members on the steering committee who provide input from a variety of different interests and areas. And we have 3 subcommittees within our steering committee and that focus on the trends and impacts, such as our safety, how technology is impacting us through the automated, connected electric and shared vehicles, and how we can become more resilient as a state. So these subcommittees are members of a subset of the fuller steering committee, and we're going to encourage you today to join as a friend so that you can keep informed and provide your comments and input. Next slide. So there's 4 different pieces of the Florida Transportation Plan, and it starts with the vision element. This was just recently approved over the summer, and we're moving into the policy element now. And this is where the rubber is going to begin to hit the road as we move into implementation. We're collecting comments and trying to get that feedback so that we really get the policies right today so that we're able to go into implementation starting at the beginning of next year. And then another part of the whole plan is how we perform. Are we doing what we said we did? And we measure that also, and we report that back out. Next slide, please. So as you can see, the vision element we just recently completed. And if you want to get a copy of this, they're available, and you can just go on to floridatransportationplan.com and be able to download a copy. So I encourage everyone to take a look. It really has all of our guiding principles, and I'm going to go into that now. Next slide. So the goals of the Florida Transportation Plan, and you can see them here, there are 7 of them, really help us get to our goal of zero fatalities. We have a vision and a target of 0 fatalities or serious injuries on our corridors and on our transportation system. And we really are working all together to make sure that we can achieve that. We want to provide a more efficient and agile transportation system, meet the needs of our growing and changing population, as you heard in the video, increase transportation choices that improve accessibility and equity for all, enhance the quality of life of the environment and Florida's communities, which we're all a part of, and make our economy more competitive. Next slide. So what will we do with your input? So today we can't create this plan without you. So your input is extremely important to informing how the policy documents and how we will implement the Florida Transportation Plan and how it will be drilled down into your local communities. We can't reflect your needs without you telling us if we're not doing a great job. So this is a good opportunity for us to listen and hear from you so that we can make sure that the things that you valued are incorporated into the plan. So all input is received and organized by subject matter, and then it's given to the steering committee and incorporated into the plan as we move forward. So, since all input is considered, it's really important for you to speak up and let us know what you're thinking and how we can make our transportation system better for all users. So with that, just want to give you a little update on the time frame, and then I want to turn it over to the listening session so that we can hear from you, and then I think we're going to follow up at the end with some questions and answers. So we are in the policy element. As I said, the vision element has been completed, so we're still in the draft policy element. We're getting public comment now all the way through November, and in December we'll finalize the policy element, and then we'll move into implementation. And with that, Tony, am I turning it back over to you, or are we in answering questions at the end?
Thank you so much. Yes, actually what we'll do is if throughout the day, if you will post questions in the question and answer feature, and if you're watching this on Facebook Live or any other rebroadcast, you can send us a message to transportation@abletrust.org. We'll be monitoring those lines. But for today, feel free to ask questions on the Q&A. And thank you so much, Allison. Jill, I actually have Horace on the screen, so we'll go to Horace Brown next, and then we'll go to David Darn. Horace, thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate you for allowing me an opportunity to be here today. As you all have mentioned so much before, transportation is such a huge component of what we do here at Vocational Rehabilitation. We provide assistance and support to individuals with disabilities to find, help them seek and retain employment. And in doing so, we take a holistic approach to address every aspect to a person securing employment. More specifically, it includes transportation. In my experience as a consultant and as an administrator, I have seen committed individuals seek employment opportunities but face challenges with feasible transportation. And some of those most common factors that I've noticed include unknowing what those resources are, limited bus routes, and also in some cases not knowing that transportation is available at all. Now, granted, there are some services that exist, such as Uber and Lyft and so forth. However, they do not provide that adequate accommodations to individuals with disability. And I think the new transportation plan that is being developed and with the input of everyone on this board will help increase the awareness. And I'm hoping for a user-friendly transportation network that would allow us, the users, to customize and select accommodations, as well as resolve some of the challenges facing transportation. And additionally, I do also include that strong advertisement presence, whether it's virtually online in this capacity, to inform the public of these services will be a great benefit to the general public. In closing, I am also internally grateful for all the efforts by the Florida Department of Transportation and providing opportunities for transportation for individuals with disability. And I look forward to expanding this awareness and resource to community of vocational rehabilitation. Thank you so much. It's back in your hands, Tony.
Horace, thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. And up next, looks like
we have David Darm. David Darm, thank you so much. We'll go to you. And then after that, Freddie Valdez.
Hey, thank you, Tony. Thank you to the Able Trust and Florida Transportation Plan and all those who are part of this discussion. This is really important. It's an honor to be here. My name is David Darm. I am the Executive Director of the Florida Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged. So a quick summary about our program, if you're not aware of it. We are a statewide program. We support transportation and access. This is part of our mission for those who have disabilities, low income, or older adults who have no other means of transportation available to them to get to employment, healthcare, education, and everything else in the community. How we accomplish this, we work with organizations that are called Community Transportation Coordinators, or CTCs. These entities are around each of the counties. They are assigned to support, through our funding, to support transportation for those who don't have any other means, such as Medicaid or the fixed route system or other programs that are supporting transportation maybe for specific activities, but maybe not supporting for other activities in the community. So we try to hit those gaps in the system. How are we going to accomplish that is kind of in tandem with what the Florida Transportation Plan and the Able Trust and these other efforts to try to improve these opportunities, improve access. We have 4 goals, I would say. Number one, as you heard earlier, we must determine first the needs of our customers, of our riders, understanding that our system needs to adapt to those needs. Those needs change, and that those needs shouldn't be conforming to the system as per se, that the system should be adapting to those needs. So that's important. And hearing from the town hall today, that's a part of us understanding and having a better way of adjusting to those needs. Second is innovation and being able to ensure that our system is constantly adapting to the market changes, as you've heard about Uber and Lyft and some of these companies coming in and they're changing the way that the service is designed, particularly with a more on-demand approach versus the traditional scheduled trips. We want to be sure that our system is adapting to these changes and being able to respond effectively as we go into the 21st century with these innovations. Third is to promote collaboration, which is a part of this discussion, ensuring that we're working, our CTCs and our partners are working closely with organizations like the Able Trust, Voc Rehab, the Centers for Independent Living, and others who support our customers' needs. It's not just our program that needs to be doing it all. We need to have a collaborative effort. And then finally, the 4th goal is to try to promote the most integrity of data and being able to use data, whether it's these type of settings or hard evidence data to evaluate our efforts going into the future to ensure that we're continually adapting to these changes. This is something that we're especially doing this year with our funding and allocating our funds based on the hard evidence that we have in front of us. So with that, thank you again for this opportunity, and I look forward to hearing what comes out of this town hall and continuing to partner with the Able Trust and other organizations here today. So thank you.
David, thank you so much for that. Up next will be Freddie Valdez, and then followed by Jocelyn Escobar. Freddie, it's all yours now.
Hi, I'm Freddie Valdez with Project 10, which stands for the Transition Education Network. We're a Florida discretionary project funded through the Florida Department of Education, Bureau of Exceptional Education and Student Services, based out of the University of South Florida, St. Petersburg. There are 5 regional transition representatives as part of the project. I am the one that covers West Central Florida, which is Region 4, from Sarasota all the way up to Ocala, and then some of the small rural districts such as Hardee and DeSoto County. Project 10 is a project that helps school districts with training, technical assistance, publications, and resources to help students with disabilities that are transitioning from high school into the adult world. The goal is we want every student with disability to have the opportunity to achieve their dreams in terms of employment, continuing education, post-secondary education, and training. Some of the challenges that we're hearing from our stakeholders, we also sponsor interagency councils. In my region, I have 12 school districts, 12 counties. There are 9 active interagency councils, and they are some of the stakeholders that shared some of their concerns with me. So some of the stakeholders consist of course, students, families, the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, Children's Medical Services, the Agency for Persons with Disabilities, the high school high-tech programs, you name it, there's a stakeholder on our interagency transition council. And some of the challenges they shared with me is the I-75 corridor right now. Public transportation seems to be lacking where there is public transportation on the east side of I-75. Since the west side of I-75 is so developed now, there seems to be a lot of public transportation there, but on the east side of 75, there's challenges in getting public transportation access for individuals with disabilities. Then the second thing that the stakeholders were sharing with me are the small and rural counties are having challenges getting opportunities for employment for their students when there is no public transportation in those small and rural districts. The big thing they shared with me, they like the fact that those districts that who have public transportation are able to either ride for free if they're an individual with a disability or at low cost. So that's one of the greatest gifts to those individuals. That's all I think I have in terms of the concerns. They did also want, as was expressed earlier, more marketing and maybe some travel trainers that could partner with the school system on helping train individual students with disabilities, high school students that are about to exit, on what's available in terms of public transportation. Thank you.
Freddie, thank you so much. So we'll turn it over to Jocelyn Escobar, and then we'll follow that with Kent Carroll.
Hi everyone, my name is Jocelyn. I have a few short remarks for today, but before I get started, I wanted to let you all know that I'm so happy to be here with you today, and thank you so much for including me in your town hall for accessible transportation. It means a lot to me. My remarks today are going to be relating to the deaf community and my experience growing up, and really relating to access with public transportation.
One second, we'll get this fixed in just a moment. Actually, Kent, if you will be ready to go, what I'll do is I'll recue the Jocelyn video, and Kent Carroll, are you on the line? Give me 1 second here. So I think that all of us have learned over the last few weeks that Zoom is either our friend or our foe, but lots of great things that we can learn from this whole process. And one of those things is that I'm probably not going to be a production specialist in my next life. So let's see.
Kent's line looks like it's unmute. Kent, can you hear that? Are you on the line?
Kent, I don't see a microphone there, so.
Well, I'm happy to stand in for Kent. Can you hear me? This is Kirsten.
Kirsten, I can see you and hear you.
Can you hear me? Can you see me okay?
I can. Thank you so much. Appreciate you standing.
You guys are doing a great job. I don't know how to do Zoom, or I would have helped you. I'm so sorry. My hands were tied.
You're fine.
Kent is having technical problems, but I first want to honor your work, Abel Trust. I want to honor your work that you've done since I met you. You guys are working so hard. Horace Brown has been so kind to me. I've been able to learn from him to help Kent. And I didn't have this meeting planned, so I'm sure no one cares, right? Just give me an applause like this.
There you go. Good job.
I'm just like you, Tony.
We'll come back to Kent in just 1 second if you'd like.
Yeah, if we can just give him a minute. He has worked so hard. He's worked very hard, Tony. I've been working closely with him this year, And there's so much that we're doing, getting prepared for what's to come for our future with transportation for Florida. And Kent is dynamic. I don't want you to miss a call, so hopefully he's here.
Give us just 1 second then. I'll tell you what the lineup
I'll
is.
come back on if I need to, okay?
Sounds great. I'm going to go ahead, and if you'll go ahead and turn off your video and your microphone, I will tap dance for just 1 second as we figure out what the next steps are here. Let me go ahead and give you the lineup for those of you who are speaking next. One is, next up will be Danielle McGill, followed by Jeff Johnson, and then Paul Edwards. Danielle, I'll be right back with you in just 1 second. I think we've got Jocelyn back up with us. So let's try this again.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jocelyn. I have a few short remarks for today, but before I get started, I wanted to let you all know that I'm so happy to be here with you today, and thank you so much for including me in your town hall for accessible transportation. It means a lot to me. My remarks today are going to be relating to the deaf community and my experience growing up, and really relating to access with public transportation. In my opinion, everyone needs access, right? So I think it would be great if we can provide free public transportation, free buses for anybody who needs to get to work, to school, really anywhere that they need to go. But the problem is, included in that population is the deaf community. And when you ride public transportation, there are constantly speakers blaring, there are announcements being made, and the deaf community needs access, whether it be captioning or something else. And lately it's become worse because of COVID-19. And the reason that it's become worse and why it's affected the deaf community is because it's so difficult to try to communicate with somebody if they're wearing a mask. If you want to ask somebody, how much is the bus fare? And they're wearing a mask, it's so difficult to see what they're saying, so I won't be able to read their lips. That's really been my experience lately and really growing up. I just feel that we really need that support for captioning and for the deaf community to have equal access. We want to make sure that we have a level playing field with hearing people. So I really hope that we're able to make some improvements based on what we discussed today. So I really appreciate all of your hard work, trying to understand what it is that we go through and what we need so that we can have equal access. I really hope this makes a difference. Thanks for watching.
All right. Thank you so much for your patience all. We are almost caught up. Now what we, again, as we have figured out is that we never know what is coming up next, but I think we're going to go to Danielle McGill, if that's okay. Jill, if you will spotlight her and I will get her slides up.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me to be a part of this conversation. I would like to share some statements and some research that was conducted by the Anstork Center and under the FDOT Section 5310 grant when it comes to the end user and the rider and the client.
Jill, could you unspotlight me or turn me off? Let's see. Danielle, 1 second as I figure things out here. Thank you so much. I think I've got your slides up.
Thank you. I appreciate it again for allowing me to be a part of this conversation, and the Able Trust and the CTD and all the people that work together to make the transportation system more inclusive for everyone. As you know, a well-connected and diverse transportation system is the key to community-wide mobility. An inclusive transportation system is accessible by all members of a community, regardless of age or ability. It begins and ends with the customer, rider, or client, like David said earlier. The goal is to encourage communities to have visions and goals where the entire transportation network works together. The problem that individuals and families and community members see is that our system is very fragmented when it comes to paratransit. In regards to access to funding, and the problem is that there's a major disconnect between the service and the system. So access to funding is the biggest barrier. Where to find the funding on a federal, state, or county level. Human services agencies are highly impacted due to limited or the lack of funding in operational dollars to operate a transportation service for their individuals. Every county has different policies and procedures and eligibility requirements, which is what we found very confusing for individuals moving or traveling into other areas of the state. We have seen urban and rural areas throughout Florida. Many transportation disadvantaged populations experience and see limited cross-county mobility in transportation. In urbanized areas such as southeast area of our state, there's a lack of connectivity among various modes, which creates barriers for individuals with disabilities or riders to make transfers safely. Riders, we found in our research, sometimes feel stuck between using the different modes or the lack of knowledge that there are other modes that do exist besides the paratransit and the fixed route system. Riders need more access and would like to see more options with the different services. There is a need for access to life-sustaining activities, as you all know, to gain and remain independent, like employment, medical services, secondary education, and recreational activities. The increase of mobility helps individuals with disabilities to break down the barriers of stigma, stereotypes by remaining active in our communities and society. In these past 2 years, there are solutions, and we have made progress on a state level through recent legislation and transportation grants that have been innovative and have updated our transportation network as far as technology goes, and an increase of cross-county transportation has been provided. Here are some of the solutions for accessibility and independence. Go beyond the box and create procedures that are consistent among all on-demand and paratransit systems for regional parts of the state. Work together, not in silos, but really work together for a common goal and find research in different agencies and what they are doing and find out what works and what's similar and support those efforts. Promote and support programs that instruct individuals and encourage mobility by learning the various modes, not just paratransit and fixed route. It's important for us individuals as riders to know that all transportation options that are available within our community. With more choices, we could participate more in our community. That's basically what Anstorp Center found, is that we want more freedom, more accessibility, and more options. That's all.
Danielle, thank you so much. Not only for those fantastic comments, but for being our superstar and being there when I got in trouble and jumping straight on. Your personal notes will be noted in our testimony, and I appreciate your continued involvement.
I would like to say that the CTD is working on these though. And David Durham, like he said, the different goals, being innovative, client first, finding different ways to update the technology and provide more on-demand service. So we're on the right track. It's how do we get there? So,
Thank you so much.
awesome.
All right, so next up, I have Jeff Johnson, then followed by Paul Edwards and Kent. Whenever you are on, if you will just make a sound, we'll know which item to turn to, and we'll let you back in the queue. So,
Tony, I'm taking Kent's place.
awesome.
I messaged, sorry to interrupt again, but
Not a
I
problem.
had messaged Guinevere to let you know. Thank you.
Sounds good. I'll be right back with you then. Let's go to Jeff Johnson.
Good afternoon. This is Jeff Johnson. I'm the state director for AARP here in the great state of Florida. And I just wanted to thank Able Trust for holding this opportunity and the Florida Department of Transportation for listening and collaborating with us on so many projects. I think I just want to make 3 quick points today, 2 of which are really doubling down and expanding on the work that the department has already led. One is on complete streets, and I know that in this time of pandemic, we've come to recognize the importance of a really complete approach to mobility options and transportation. As people are using sidewalks in ways they didn't before, as people are relying on delivery trucks in ways they weren't before, as people are using personal electric vehicles, and as we look ahead to the day when we may be using autonomous vehicles more, you're seeing micro-mobility show up in ways that it hasn't in the past, and you're also seeing people invest in bigger things like RVs as a way to try to explore transportation options in the time of a pandemic. And while we're focused on the here and now, I think that these are trends that I would encourage the department to think about as we go forward, really focus on how we make streets that are truly complete, not just for walkers, cyclists, and cars, but for all the other forms of transportation that we're seeing emerge during this time. I think the second thing that I would say, and this is really from AARP's perspective so critical, is the work that the department does with the Safe Mobility for Life Coalition. I know that AARP has been a proud partner and collaborator in this, and that we're really interested and focused on trying to provide people, especially those who have aged here in Florida or come here from somewhere else, with a full set of understanding of what the options are to get around and stay connected to your community. I think for many generations, certainly the last couple of generations that have settled in Florida, we have focused on one solution to all our problems, and that's a car. And what we've forgotten and what we now need to relearn is that there are a variety of ways to get from point A to point B, or to get what you wanted in point B to your house at point A. And we just need more education and more tools to help people make those transitions as they decide that maybe that big car isn't what they need at this point in their lives. To think about what the other opportunities are and how best to engage them and how to do it safely, which of course takes on a new meaning in this time when we're focused not only on avoiding crashes, but also avoiding infections. I think the third thing that I'll say is something that is relatively new for AARP on a policy front, but something that I suspect the department has deep knowledge of, and that is how we do this in a way that is equitable. I think that it's no surprise and no secret to anybody that much of our transportation infrastructure was built in a way that disadvantaged communities suffered from. And as we have heard the protests in the wake of the death of George Floyd and too many others, one of the things that's come out in local protests here in Florida are needs that come back to transportation infrastructure. We've heard protesters say, we just want to be able to cross the street safely like you can in the nice parts of town. And I think that we as leaders in this state, and certainly the Department of Transportation as a leader in thinking about transportation and mobility options, needs to really assess where we have perhaps disadvantaged communities and how we work to make things better and make things right. Those are the 3 points I would leave. I know that you have a number of great speakers, but again, I appreciate the opportunity to continue to work with the Department of Transportation and the opportunity today with Able Trust. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jeff. So Kent, Kirsten, whoever is on from APD, we're going to try and go to you. And I appreciate this. I know how hard Kent has actually been working on this because he's been communicating with us. So
Yes,
But I
and
think
he's also had to train me this year, and I can't get into what all he has to do. You know how that works.
Yep.
Well, first of all, I'm honored to represent Kent Carroll with the Agency for Persons with Disabilities. He is a leader for our agency. He is someone that I admire and look up to. He coached me, so that's all I'm going to tell you for now about our story. My first thing that I would like to say without having a planned speech today, Jocelyn.
Right. Escobar. Yeah.
Jocelyn, I would like to tell you that it's an honor for me to be on this call to listen to you today. It was absolutely everything I could have hoped for. And I am so grateful for your voice today to our ears so that we could see what you're trying to say to us. It made perfect sense to me, and it did not fall on deaf ears, and I want to thank you. David Darm, I hold the utmost respect for. Please listen to him. We're not in the transportation business. The integrity is the word that David Darm used, and we need to hold tight to that. Jeff Johnson is with AARP. As long as I can remember, unless things have changed, AARP has always had a great reputation. I would like to meet with you in the future to learn more about what you bring to the table, if I may, with this group of panelists at another point, because I think that you guys, if you are following Jeff's instructions, my keys to this conversation, where, when, how. It can't just be AARP. We need help in Florida. We can go to, I'm happy to go places for Kent at any time. I would on vacation go and travel to Texas to meet with them about what they've done. California has opened us with open arms. I haven't talked to them about transportation, but they're the kindest people. Oklahoma has opened doors for us so that we can learn from them, and we're grateful for everyone's help. So from Director Palmer for the Agency for Persons with Disabilities and representing Kent Carroll and the leadership of Liesl Ramos, I'm grateful to have this time, and I'm humbled and honored to be here. Thank you.
Kirsten, thank you so much. And what we will do is invite, if you don't mind, Kent into our office, and we'll, or at least through Zoom, and we'll get a video on as well. And this is for everybody who's participating today. There are going to be lots of opportunities to follow up on this, as we mentioned, since we're about almost at our halfway point. You can continue to follow up with us by posting on social media using the hashtag AbleTrust. We'll also have an email address dedicated just to your comments. If you'd like to have comments sent to us that we would forward on to the Florida Transportation Plan Steering Committee, you can use transportation@abletrust.org. That's transportation@abletrust.org. And we'll collect your comments and forward them directly to the Florida Transportation Plan Steering Committee. We are going to move on with our program now, and let's just make sure that everything is queued up here properly. For many of our friends that are engaged in the communications world, and you are now realizing that one of the other things, in addition to accessible transportation, is some accessible technology that we can all use here. Appreciate each of you who is working with us patiently throughout all this process, and particularly each of the individuals who recorded their comments because they wanted to respect the time limits that each of them had. So I'm going to turn it over to Peter Connell, and then after that we're going to turn to Paul Edwards, and I'll come back to you, Jill, after that.
Hi, I'm Peter O'Connell, the CEO for the Center for Independent Living of South Florida. stunningly beautiful countrysides that there are on this planet. The entire state has features that can be stacked up against and compete favorably against the greatest destinations in the world. Yet, when someone asks if they should visit, let alone make this their home in the Sunshine State, there's always hesitation in my mind. We rightfully take a great deal of pride in our home, but it's not without its challenges. We have the opportunity to realize our individual interests lay in collective action, and our collective and individual benefit also. A great deal of the state economic opportunity thrives from sharing paradise with those seeking to enjoy their golden years, visitors from not only across the country, but across the entire world itself. So strong is the appeal of the state that I flew in California for a job interview, was offered the position, took one look around and saw that my new home was going to be here. So how do we make paradise even better and extend the opportunity for both residents and visitors? Anything I can say would fall into three categories. First, offer choices that are robust and not just in name only. In Miami-Dade, if you plan 48 hours in advance and you have a reasonable, and I would note not guaranteed, chance to arrive at your destination window around 4 hours, plus or minus. It simply asks you to review all of your own travel schedules and see how well you could organize them with those restrictions in place. As challenging as a mode of travel as this is, there are a number of counties where it simply isn't even available. Second, we need to encourage, and probably more importantly, incentivize municipalities and metro areas to work collaboratively. That difficulty scheduling that paratransit ride is made impossible if the destination happens to be a few feet over the county boundary. We need to recognize the geographic and economic areas within our state and plan around them, not simply the current political boundaries. Thirdly, and finally, we need to consider a diverse set of transportation options and optimize them for maximum usability for all communities, whether it be cars, rail, buses, paratransit, taxis, or even PNCs. Each have aspects that can be tweaked, while small in planning and policy stage have a profound impact on usability and their benefits to the community. As I finish, I'll leave you with a request. One of the disability community's go-to phrases is nothing about us without us. For example, I've consulted on large capital projects around accessibility, and I'm happy to do so at any time. And though I'm in Miami-Dade, there are over 15 independent living centers located across the state, and I'm more than happy to help make this state a paradise for everyone. Hi, I'm Peter O'Connor.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, let's see how we can make this start working.
Hi, I'm Paul Edwards, and I represent the Florida Rehabilitation Council of the Blind. We are, in theory, a 22-member council, which represents folks who are blind and individuals who serve them. I want to raise really 5 issues in a fairly short period of time. The first of those issues concerns the population who are blind. We, unlike other populations, have no choice in terms of transportation. We haven't yet persuaded Florida to give us driver's licenses that would allow us to operate vehicles, which means that we are forced to use either public transportation or some other kind of transportation that will work, as in paratransit. The second thing that means is that the population of blind people becomes an issue. As people get older, they are more likely to go blind. And in fact, there are statistics that demonstrate that over the next 10 to 12 years in this state, the population of blind people is likely to double. How are the transportation needs of this population going to be met in a transportation plan that's evolving for the whole population? There are 3 issues that I would like the transportation plan to seriously consider. One of them is blended transportation, that is making use of ride shares as well as other possible modes of transportation in conjunction with paratransit system and perhaps in conjunction with public transportation systems as well. The advantage of making use of these approaches is that there could be lowered cost for counties, which would enable them to devote more of their resources to providing transportation to other individuals who perhaps couldn't make use of ride-sharing systems. Second thing, and the second to last thing that I want to talk about, is a growing problem that doesn't relate to intra-city transportation, but instead relates to intercity transportation. Trains and planes and automobiles may be wonderful, but for the most part, they are going less and less from city to city in Florida. It is becoming more difficult for blind people to move around the state. It is far more difficult for individuals who are blind or deafblind to be able to access transportation effectively and appropriately between cities in Florida. I don't know that I have a solution, but I think it means that it is really important to develop the kind of regional cooperation that was always considered in our transportation plan as a matter of importance. The last thing that I want to say on behalf of the blind people of Florida is that there has been a lot of innovation demonstrated by the Transportation Commission for Disadvantaged Folks and others who are working on transit. I think, though, it is for the most part not finding its way down to local transit authorities who are tending not to be interested in innovation, but are instead concerned with operating with the same old systems, with the same old rules, with the same old disadvantages. I appreciate the opportunity to have spoken with you. I hope that what we'll be able to do is take a statewide approach that will take a top-down approach that will create a more innovative and appropriate transit system that will better meet the needs of all of Florida's blind folks. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that, Paul. So we are close to the top of the hour, and I want to thank each of you who is participating with us today. I want to remind you that you can post questions to the webinar Q&A feature, and we do have participants with Florida Department of Transportation on the line. They might be able to answer those today. There will also be other panelists that might be able to provide advice. There are also many questions and comments being submitted through the chat feature. These are going to be archived and submitted as well to the Florida Transportation Plan Steering Committee as we go forward. And I appreciate those comments there, so feel free to keep adding that. If you are watching this on Facebook Live, or you happen to be watching a rebroadcast on the Florida channel, thank you so much for your interest and your participation. You can still submit questions by sending emails to transportation@abletrust.org. We appreciate so many of the great partners that are sharing their ideas and their insights today. And next up, as you can see, is Sheila Gritz-Swift. Sheila, I'm going to turn it over to you, and appreciate you joining us today, and thank you so much. After Sheila, by the way, we will turn to Richanne Tucolo, followed by Denise Torres. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Sheila Gritz-Swift, and I serve as the Deputy Director with the Florida Developmental Disabilities Council. A common theme that I've heard this afternoon is partnerships, and I'm going to talk a bit about the partnerships that are so critical to the work of transportation for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The Council identified critical needs and developed a goal to address transportation within our current state plan that covers the time period from October 2016 through September of 2021. Our work over the past 4 years has included greater collaboration with agencies and organizations that are charged with transportation in developing and implementing sustainable transportation solutions through the provision of technical assistance, resources, and information on the key issues, and by educating key stakeholders on the unique needs of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities that will ultimately improve access to safe and affordable methods of transportation. Our outcomes to date have included a successful transportation voucher model in Hillsborough County that was collaboratively funded by the Council and the Florida Department of Transportation. It has been sustained over time, and it will be replicated in up to 8 additional communities this year through Council funding. And we are hearing some very innovative approaches to truly meeting the needs of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities through some of these projects that are being proposed. Partnerships with the Florida Department of Transportation and the Commission on the Transportation Disadvantaged to educate and share resources that are important to transportation for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, such as travel training and disability awareness resources. Over $1 million leveraged through state appropriations, which was achieved through collaborative efforts that make stakeholders and legislators more aware of the critical issues that impact this population. Greater access to employment, post-secondary education, and the wider community by way of new options that also expand the service areas and hours of operations, with some providers now providing 24/7 availability. The Florida Transportation's Plan long-range state goals of providing a more efficient and mobile transportation system, meeting the needs of a growing and changing population, enhancing the quality of life and environment of Florida's communities, and increasing opportunities for access to transit and other modes of transportation are well aligned with this transportation goal and the desired outcome of improving access to safe and affordable methods of transportation. Our work over the past 4 years has proven that greater collaboration among all partners with similar goals truly result in better outcomes. It is our hope that ongoing collaboration among key stakeholders will be continued in all transportation efforts moving forward to ensure that the unique transportation needs of Florida's individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities are considered and result in expanded access to safe and affordable transportation. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share this afternoon.
Thank you so much. So we are going to go to Rich Ann Tucolo next, but I do want to note that I saw the Kent Carroll on the, so we are going to come back to you right after Rich Ann, if that's okay, Kent. If you are still interested, we'll make sure that your comments come in, and then Denise Torres. Thank you so much. That'll be our coming order.
I know firsthand how much people with disabilities rely on transportation providers. And I speak for many service providers, both large and small, when I express our gratitude for the FDOT grant. These grants are the financial backbone to keep safe and reliable transportation available to thousands of individuals with disabilities across the state. The FDOT grant programs are vital to the lives and well-being of Floridians with disabilities. While we are still in the reaction and adjustment phase to the COVID-19 pandemic, the need for specialized transportation programs customized to the needs of people with disabilities cannot be overemphasized. 1/4 of Tampa Bay households include one or more residents with a disability, which is higher than the state and national average. As we providers cautiously reopen our day program services here in Tampa and across the state, there are health programs must be put in place before medically frail seniors and individuals with disabilities may safely return and enter a 10 to 12 passenger vehicle as they currently exist. Even by limiting the number of passengers in a vehicle, there is little way to provide the needed social distance and safety for those passengers and drivers without retrofit to the existing vehicles. This is a unique opportunity for FDOT to provide critically needed funding and support a return to vital services for people with disabilities. We ask FDOT to consider immediate flexible funding for air purifiers for each van and sneeze guards and other partitions so that riders have their own safe space in shared vehicles. Service providers have been impacted by the Safer at Home regulations and respectfully request the ability to modify our existing transportation contracts, including forgiveness and grace periods for vehicle maintenance and vehicles not in use. FDOT support to provide a safe, gated space where vehicles not in use may be secured until they return to service. In addition, looking at the impact of the COVID-19 and long-term takeaways, we respectfully ask FDOT to consider providing grant recipients with the opportunity to purchase a wider variety of vehicles, including those with entrances on both sides. All of us at McDonald Training Center are committed to improving the lives of people with disabilities, including finding the best ways of providing safe and reliable transportation. We appreciate the opportunity to share our recommendations and thank the Able Trust for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. All right, Kent, if you are on and want to turn on your camera, that'll be my cue to turn to you. Otherwise, we are going to go to Denise Torres next. So let me know. Denise, if you are on and can turn on your camera, that will be my cue to come to you. Kent, all right, we're going to come to you. Kent, let me just tell you that I think the most impressive thing for me is not only your perseverance, but my strong ability not to cuss once so far in the last hour as I've been working through all these chaos. And I appreciate you persevering through all this. So Kent, I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
All right, thank you for allowing me to have this opportunity. I've been having computer problems all day, and I'm finally able to get through, and I'm thankful for being on this call. My name is Kent Carroll. I'm with the Agency for Persons with Disabilities. I'm the transportation coordinator there. Just want to just give you a brief summary of what we do at APD. We support individuals with developmental disabilities to live, work, and learn in their communities. We offer our clients a wide range of services, social, medical, residential, and behavioral services. And right now we are providing services to about 32,000 individuals on our waiver, a total of 50,000 people altogether. Transportation is one of many services that we offer at APD. Our agency itself does not provide services per se. We contract or have agreements with providers to provide various services. And with transportation, it is no different. Right now, we are serving about 12,000 individuals in our program with transportation services. And for the most part, those trips are to and from waiver services, home and community-based waiver services. Most of the transportation services that we provide, roughly 75% of those individuals are between the ages of 23 and 59. So that's the segment of our population that utilize transportation services the most. And that is also a reflection of the general population. That segment between 23 and 59 need transportation the most. The folks that we serve, they are by definition transportation disadvantaged. So therefore, even when they're not utilizing our type of trips, waiver trips, they are eligible to utilize the coordinated system for transportation disadvantaged services. Over the years, a few of the problems and the barriers and the challenges, I would say, that we've seen with the folks that we serve is that you have a number of multiple funding sources that they have to navigate through. As an example, you may have your waiver trips, you may have your non-emergency medical trips, you may have ADA trips, you may have TD trips. So all of these various trips from these various funding sources, I think many times is a challenge to individuals who need these services to be able to access the community. And also, especially in your rural areas, you have limited mobility options and limited mobility transportation providers. We try to help our clients be able to access the coordinated system by fostering a relationship with the community transportation coordinators and assisting in any way that we can to help them access the transportation system. We have waiver support coordinators. These are the individuals who work with our clients and coordinate the services for them, and also help them to access community sources, not just transportation, but all kinds of community sources that are waiver based, and also your generic or natural supports as well. So in transportation is one of the things that we would like to be able to do more so at the waiver support coordination level, to have those individuals be more informed about what are the transportation options are in the community, not just the waiver transportation that we provide through APD, but other transportation options that our clients have to access and utilize in the community. That's one piece that I think we can do a whole lot better in improving on to help our individuals access transportation. Another issue, and we've seen this also, is sometimes there's a lack of cross-county, inter-county, or even inter-city transportation options. Sometimes individuals in these rural areas have to cross county lines into urban areas in order to access services and community resources. That's a problem as well. But what we want to do, another thing we want to do at APD, we want to foster a better relationship with our community transportation coordinators. I think right now there are about 48 community transportation coordinators spread out over the 67 counties in Florida. We would like to have more of a collaborative effort with those community transportation coordinators and encourage our waiver providers to have contracts with those CTCs as well. So that, and we believe that will be a win-win situation for our clients in the short term as well as in the long run. But at APD, like I said earlier, we're really concerned about our folks not just having waiver trips and having those trips to be affordable, safe, and reliable, but we also want to help them access other types of trips into the community as well. I think that's about it. I also thank you for this opportunity to share with you. Finally got through my computer issues, and I thank you so much.
Kent, it's a world that we all understand at the moment. So thank you so much for persevering. I appreciate that so much. And Denise, I know that you have been waiting for a little while. Denise Torres with the ARC Jacksonville will be next, and then we'll go with Lorraine Gusek. Denise, are you on with us?
I am. There you go.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for asking the ARC to have a representative. I do work for the ARC Jacksonville. I'm an advocacy specialist here, and I'm in a very fortunate position because I work right by the hallway here, and I see people arriving every single day before COVID, to come to work, to be participating in their jobs, in their workshop, in their day programs, coming and going. Our individuals at the ARC off Village off of Hodges, they have a very robust life and they get where they need to go, whatever means they have to. They have most of our guys that aren't driving use our transportation disadvantaged, not because we're not because we're so far away from the bus stops and stuff. It's just such a dangerous area for them to try and get on those buses. So what I wanted to mention was, you know, our population to get to work, the individuals that we serve, they can use the paratransit, but oftentimes it comes with you know, calling for 2 hours before you ride. You have to be at work and staying at work for up to 2 hours after until a ride can come back to get you. It costs you money, but it's the most cost-effective way if you're using the JTA Connects type of buses. If you're using Connections Plus, you might be a big spender. You're spending $6 a ride, but you're not going any further than 15 miles. Our guys will double up and try to use Connections Plus because it'll get them where they need to go within a half an hour of starting work instead of 2 hours or longer to get to work or to come home after work. Connections Plus has been a great addition to their ability to be independent and to be social and to go to different restaurants and things like that. So I wish that would get expanded for them because I know that that's something that they love having that option about. Uber and Lyft does the same thing, but more money. So it really depends on their funds to be able to use those. If they do decide to use the bus system, we have a flyer lane, which makes it very easy for our individuals to get to where the flyer goes. But our transportation hubs are not necessarily in the best areas, even though there's a police substation right there. It's not the best area. So I know I wouldn't want my son, who has an autism diagnosis and intellectual disability, to ride into the hub to change stations in order to go to the other place. He used to ride the bus all the time to work, but once he moved, that was no longer an option that I felt comfortable for him using, and so he's using the paratransit. Community transportation is like a lost art, having just community shuttles that go back and forth in the neighborhood. That would be amazing to have that. Jacksonville has bought in autonomous vehicles to look at, and that's a great option, and maybe some of our folks can use that one day. Autonomous vehicles are not out there right now, so many of our individuals, they use good old-fashioned foot power on their bikes or on their feet. And I have to tell you, in the 3 years I lived at the Village, we had 2 people hit by a car in a crosswalk, doing it the right way, hit by a car, not paying attention. One was a staff member and one was a client of the agency. Luckily, neither was hurt badly, but people aren't paying attention to even foot traffic. And so I would say, when considering transportation, just on my way to work today, the amount of people running red lights, I don't know, that's just stopping at red lights is not something that people do regularly anymore. There's always that guy who's going to run the race. So we can train people all day to watch for the lights and when to go, but you really got to watch for the guy that's not paying attention. So safety is a big issue with transportation for our guys. Red lights, like I said, we've had 2 people hit by a car, and multiple lanes of traffic to cross to get to on the spot bus stops. That's all dangerous for our folks who try to get here. So door-to-door works, but there's other options that are out there for them that they are utilizing. And if we're going to talk about bikes, we've also had people who've had their bikes stolen right up the road. I know it's part of transportation, but there's got to be better ways, safer ways for them to choose to use their bikes and to go up the roads to do their shopping and go out to restaurants, because some of them will not drive and you don't need a vehicle. But if you have a bike, you should be able to lock it up securely and know it's going to be there when you come out. So that should be part of it too.
Appreciate your comments and thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you in Arc Jacksonville. Thanks for your help. All right, we're going to turn to Lorraine.
Hi, I'm Lorraine Gussack, the Executive Director for Florida Disabled Outdoors Association, and I'm so happy that we're including recreation in this conversation. I've been with Florida Disabled Outdoors Association for 20 years, and we have seen recreation as the start of inclusion. It not only provides health and wellness benefits, but also is a fun way to learn about networking, socialization, and transportation. That's why we're so glad that folks are thinking about recreation in the vision. One important thing to think about is connecting pathways. Many people have a park or a playground close to their home, but they have no easy way to get there because there is no safe path like a sidewalk. Without the connecting path, a person that uses a mobility device may not be able to get to the facility. So now you have a beautiful, accessible recreation facility, but you may not even be able to get there. Another thing to think about is who's using that pathway. It may be used by people walking, biking, electric vehicles, e-scooters, and even horses, in addition to wheelchairs. The design should accommodate this multi-use. Once we design the pathway to include someone that uses a wheelchair, it's also good for someone pushing a stroller, families biking together, etc. You get the picture. Having alternative pathways throughout our city will enable people of all abilities to access a variety of resources while also reducing traffic on our roadways. It is simply better for everyone. Education and signage are important to make sure that people are aware of the many different transportation used on a path. It is also important for the person with a disability to know who else might be on that trail, so they can make the decision for themselves if they feel it is safe. Our off-road trails are starting to add information at trailheads like width, grade, surface, obstacles, rest intervals, etc. These all assist the person in deciding if the path is right for them. Once someone gets to the entrance of a park or rec facility, we need to make sure that there's a good path to get to the actual recreation facility. We've seen beautiful, accessible sporting facility with a wonderful parking lot and no way for someone to get using a manual chair or a walker, for example, to be able to get from the parking lot to the field. It's super important to have transportation that goes to our recreation facilities. It's also important to consider the hours that the transportation runs. We don't want to have a situation where you have someone that can get to the ballpark to play an inclusive sport, but then the buses stop running, so they have no way to get home. When we think about transportation recreation, it's important to think about tourism. The number one question we get is about beach access and the availability of beach wheelchairs. If we have recreation that is welcoming to families of all abilities, more people will visit our beautiful state. This may be a spouse or a child that uses a wheelchair, or could also mean grandma that can't walk as far as she used to be able to walk. There's so many details that can be discussed, and we are happy that recreation is part of this discussion. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Lori. We're going to go through a series of 3 videos here, so if you will be patient with me, I am hoping that it will all start working well.
Good afternoon, everyone.
This is Whitney Harris.
I'm the Executive Director for FAST, the Florida Alliance for Assistive Services and Technology. Today I am wearing a magenta blouse. I have long brown hair, the top part pulled back. I'm wearing glasses, and I have a white So I'd like to share a little bit about my own relationship with transportation. So I was born without my right arm and right leg. So when I first began to drive, even though I learned on a regular vehicle, my first vehicle that was my own was a right-hand drive Jeep Wrangler with the pedal switch since I only have a left foot. My family felt that not being able to reach over the steering wheel would be a real problem for me, so they wanted the center console on my left-hand side. They also wanted the gas pedal on the left, thinking that it would be too hard to reach over my prosthesis. This actually didn't end up being a real issue for me, though the vehicle did work best to my favor. However, living in a right-hand drive world, it became very challenging to do any sort of drive-throughs, going through tolls. That's where I found Transportation Disadvantages toll program, which was a real lifesaver for me, because I would have to, climb into my passenger seat, and with my prosthesis, it was just a real burden to try to throw change. And the toll booths back when they took change and not sun passes. Actually, the vehicle I have now is a regular, everyday run-of-the-mill vehicle. I have considered getting my pedal switched, but a lot of times these days they want to do like a temporary where they put a gate over your regular gas pedal and an extension over. Since it's my vehicle and I'm the predominant driver, I really didn't want to do something that was temporary. I wanted to go more permanent. So I have not made that change. For the most part, I just put my left foot over my right and I go for it. This is actually pretty interesting because when I talk to a lot of other people who don't have right feet, they think that either they must drive with their prosthesis or they must get a totally adapted vehicle or use hand controls. I have not found that to be the case for a lot of people. Of course, if you are missing both of your feet, you may consider hand controls, and no one ever recommends driving with their prosthetic foot. But this is something that as I have conversations with people, they're always surprised to learn that I drive with my left foot and just a regular vehicle. As far as our clients of FAST, we have heard over and over and over again about reaching our services is a challenge for people who have transportation barriers. So when they aren't able to come into our office or cross county lines with public transit or dial a ride, it can be a challenge to get services from us. We're very fortunate that with the world going virtual, we do have access to people that way. However, not everyone has access to internet or knows how to use it. So we still find that transportation is a barrier, and even in this pandemic realm. That's something that we're exploring, trying to figure out how we can get our assistive technology services to more Floridians and reach them. We do have some people at our regional centers. If you don't know, FAST has 6 regional centers across the state in Pensacola, Tallahassee, Jacksonville, Tampa, Orlando, and Miami, in which you can visit to receive our assistive technology services. But if you aren't in that main area, it's a challenge to get there. So we are exploring options and are open to suggestions. If you have any, you can contact me at wharris@fastinc.org, or you can call our office, which is 850-487-3278. Thank you all for your time today, and I look forward to hearing from everybody else.
It is great to have Whitney Harris with us, somebody who has worked with the Able Trust in the past, and I've had the privilege of working side by side with her in a number of different situations, and truly a fireball. Up next is Jessica
Good
Solis.
afternoon. This is Jessica Solis, and I am with the Southwest Florida Job Squad, an agency that provides services to individuals with disabilities seeking employment. We've been asked to share some experiences we've had with public transportation over the years and the clients that we serve. The first one I'd like to address is about the rural counties that we have served. Some of the cities include Clewiston, LaBelle, and Immokalee. Sorry, I have papers here. And Immokalee. There's no public transportation at this time in these areas. There's also no transportation between the neighboring counties. Therefore, it limits the availability of positions for individuals in those areas to become employed. We've had people who live in Immokalee who would willingly go to Naples. Unfortunately, the transportation is not adequate to get them there. So I'm not sure what the solution to that is, but I think it's something that should be taken a look at. These are rural areas and they're oftentimes forgotten. The second one is the Lee County Bus Line service. Although it's a very good service, we had a young man who lived in North Fort Myers and wanted to work at the airport, which is a pretty large employer here. The commute is 24 miles by car. The bus system was able to get him there in 2 buses, which is unusual. Some have to take more than 2 to get to work. Unfortunately, the commute itself was a 2-hour commute each way. Not only that, it didn't allow him to get there before 8, and he had to leave by 6 in order to utilize that public transportation. So I'm making a small proposal here that maybe a survey could be done of the peak hours of usage on the buses, and maybe create some express lines for the major hubs in town, decreasing the amount of stops that they're doing and increasing the availability of the buses to get through much faster and people to get to work quicker. The third is the door-to-door service here, the ATA service. The guidelines require that pickup and drop-off be within 3/4 of a mile near to the nearest bus stop. A young lady her mother transported her to the nearest Starbucks to get the door-to-door and then would go back and pick her up after she was done her day. This restricted the woman's independence, but it is the door-to-door service. I'm hoping that there's some discussion to be had here about possibly eliminating the 3/4 of a mile rule. And that would also open the doors for those that live beyond the 3/4 of a mile to be able to utilize that service. I thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thanks. Have a great day.
So thank you all for staying with us. I want to let you know that in addition to the live broadcast and the brief broadcast that will happen on the Florida channel and the information that is being shared live over Facebook, we will have the videos that are included in this project, as well as additional videos from this particular town hall. Okay. Let me give the lineup so that we know who's coming next. J.R. Harding, Dr. Harding, you're next, and then followed by Molly Hullinger and Lena Juarez after that. So J.R., if you will turn on your mic. I know that J.R. Harding is not only a friend, he is a former past board member of the Able Trust. J.R., are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Tony.
J.R., I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for all inviting me to be a part of the Florida Public Transportation 25-year plan. My name is J.R. Harding, and I have lived with quadriplegia for 38 of my 54 years. As a result, I will focus my perspective on the transportation disadvantaged community within the state of Florida and really around the world. Some of my key focus areas will be on universal design, community, environment, accessibility, businesses, choices, and of course, affordability. I have international, national, and local transportation expertise as a planner, as an advocate, and as an implementer. Our data shows Florida has about 9 million TD residents. Moreover, the world has approximately 1 billion individuals with disabilities, or 20% of the population. As we reimagine Florida's future, one that better connects the individual, the business, our healthcare, our leisure, and our communities together, we should start with the basic premise of universal design and usability for all. This means mobility for the 20% of people who are TD. This is very personal for me and many others that we have heard from on the phone today. For my first 7 years, I couldn't leave my house without the assistance of others. Barriers were everywhere, and especially in transportation. We all know the power of the Rosa Parks story. She had the courage to change public transportation. Mobility in our communities, Florida, and this country is a right, not an economic privilege. Mobility choices should not solely be based on the size of one's individual checkbook, but rather building bridges and facilitating community, business, and leadership and leisure opportunities. Florida should be unafraid and unapologetic to expect that our mobility options are empowering and not handicapping. This makes me think of the video that started this well-meaning Florida Transportation Plan. It does a great job highlighting our demographics, technology advancements, business evolution, but nowhere does it speak to the TD community or have sign language interpreting. Florida's TD population needs to be built in from day one of any infrastructure. We spend too much time trying to put the 20% of us back into the box that had already been built. To avoid building unequal systems, we need policies and standards that emphasize and reward universal access and usability. Our current evolution of electric vehicles has not produced accessible charging stations and related performance areas that would enable persons with disabilities to have the same choices. Our future systems should incentivize and reward inclusion options. By not building access into our plan, we will constantly be trying to play catch up rather than anticipating our mobility needs. Therefore, as we move forward with this planning process, let's make sure we learn from our past mistakes, maximize our accessibility knowledge, and reward and measure inclusive designs and practices. Only through awareness, accountability, and leadership from everyone in the community can we build and respond to our diverse mobility needs. Thanks for allowing me to participate and contribute to the Florida Public Transportation Plan.
Good afternoon. My name is Molly Hollinger, and I am deaf. I'm here as a representative of the Florida Rehabilitation Council. I serve on the board of the council as a representative of a disability group that includes representation of individuals with disabilities who have difficulty representing themselves or are unable to represent themselves. The State Rehabilitation Council was established in Section 105 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. The State Vocational Rehabilitation has established the State Council according to the requirements of Section 105 of the Act. The Council works in relationship with the State Vocational Rehabilitation Office. The Council's responsibilities include to review, analyze, and advise vocational rehabilitation on their performance related to eligibility, extent and scope, and effectiveness of services, and functions which affect the abilities of individuals with disabilities to achieve an employment outcome. We advise VR regarding activities, assist in preparation of state plans, review and analyze the effectiveness of the program, and consumer satisfaction. Prepare and submit an annual report, coordinate activities and other functions, and determine appropriate and comparable. Accessible and effective transportation plays an important role in the success of an individual to achieve their work goals. The area of deafness and hard of hearing is unique and requires a different consideration than mobility issues, one based on visual accessibility. When taking a plane, the experienced individual has to depend on the board to get information on the status of the flight and destinations. Most of the changes that are made are on the loudspeaker. I once took a flight from DC to Dallas, the sign indicating that Dallas was the first stop. At the first stop, many people in the crew got off. When I inquired what was going on, I was told that I could change my seat to wherever I wanted. At the second stop, which I assumed was Tulsa, I deplaned to find myself in Dallas. Even though my ticket was clearly to Tulsa, no one had thought to inform me when we arrived. Friends and employees spent a great amount of time looking for me. I traveled around the world and they couldn't understand how I had missed the stop. If there had been a plan to identify and accommodate individuals with disabilities, some non-visible disabilities, I wouldn't have missed my stop. Another example is when a deaf individual who was a principal at a high school realized she had boarded the wrong plane when she noticed the sun was on the wrong side. She was traveling to the west instead of to the east. Traveling plans must always be checked with an individual on the airlines, and at times this means waiting in a long line and perhaps missing your flight. Deaf individuals, including myself, have been informed they need to ride a golf cart from gate to gate. 10 years from now, we should have messages live and captioned for all people to use. It would also help if there were sign language interpreters when we requested them for travel. Emergencies happen, and we need to be aware of them, whether on a bus, train, or local transportation. New technology is helpful in assisting people who are deaf and individuals with disabilities. I spoke with a friend who has a son at Art Village in Jacksonville. It's an amazing place. He's very fortunate to have employment at the military base. He orders transportation from Jacksonville Transport Authority, JTA, giving himself an extra half hour to be sure he arrives to work on time. He pays using a card, which he can add money to on his computer. If he has difficulty, he has a job coach or family help him. He now has an application on his phone to assist him in getting transportation. He uses JTA connector to go to movies and activities with his friends. JTA is a very successful venture for him. Thank you for permitting me to share my experiences and provide input to this important matter.
Thanks, Molly. And I know that you're on the line, so I appreciate you helping us out there. So two messages. First, the next two speakers are Lena Juarez and Kathy Matthews. Lena Juarez, then Kathy Matthews. And I do want to remind folks that because we are limited on time during this town hall, you may continue to post public comments on the chat, as well as submit questions through the Q&A feature on here. And if you are watching offline or outside of the webinar, send messages to transportation@abletrust.org. Lena Juarez, thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Tony. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lena Juarez, the president of J&J & Associates. Over the past 2 decades, I've worked as an advocate and lobbyist for the transit and paratransit industries. I've represented a transit agency and an association of paratransit providers before the state legislature and state agencies. My firm is engaged in policy discussions and political decisions with legislators, staff, and the agencies regarding the reformation of the Commission on the Transportation Disadvantaged, advocacy for funding for the TD Trust Fund, as well as other funding streams. Over the years, we've done a lot of coalition building. We've also done a lot of education regarding challenges faced by persons with disabilities needing transportation to live their lives. This includes going to work, play, running errands, getting to their healthcare appointments. We continue to follow these issues today. Specifically, this past session, we followed bills that would have allowed TD providers to cross county lines. It passed the House unanimously, but stalled in the last Senate committee. I have a few observations about the industry over the past 2 decades. There have been so many changes impacting the transportation disadvantaged community, yet reform is still needed. Changing economic times has caused states, including Florida, to rein in Medicaid costs, which was the primary source of revenue for many providers. Yet innovations in technology, like ride-sharing platforms such as Uber and Lyft, now give access to non-ambulatory patients to go to doctor's appointments. I'm glad to see that the Commission on the Transportation Disadvantaged is tackling a new funding formula. I encourage you to review their study on their website. The current funding formula is outdated and creates inequities. For example, one variable is the square mileage of each county. This creates disparities that do not reflect the TD trips. Another variable is total county population. This pits the large counties against the small counties. The CTD is going through the rulemaking process now, so there is public input opportunity. And the new formula proposes that county square mileage be replaced by centerline miles, which is the Federal Highway Administration's public road mileage data. That the variable would be the actual mileage traveled by residents to access services. In case of population, the total number of county residents would be replaced by the TD eligible population. These changes, along with other recommendations, should continue Florida's progress to make funding more equitable and responsive to the needs of the TD community. Believe it or not, at one point, Florida was considered the best coordinated system in the country. As this transportation plan is drafted, I encourage the Department of Transportation to rely on the locals to get the lay of the land regarding the needs of the transportation disadvantage and to get input from the planning agencies around the state. This includes the metropolitan planning organizations, the regional planning councils, and city and county governments. I'll just say that some are more engaged than others. The more the Florida Department of Transportation can do to be a facilitator of transportation options for persons with disabilities, the greater the opportunities there will be for persons with disabilities to contribute to the economy, pursue education, engage in sports and leisure activities, and literally see the world. Thank you for this opportunity to share my experience, observations, and recommendations. I have truly enjoyed this town hall conversation today.
Lena, thank you so much for your participation. Next up will be Kathy Matthews, followed by Derek Caraway, and then Nikki Germain. So Kathy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So I'm Kathy Matthews. I'm on the board of directors for Lighthouse Central Florida. It's a local nonprofit that serves the blind and visually impaired, many of whom, our son included, are considered transportation disadvantaged, which, as everybody knows by now, means that door-to-door paratransit service is needed. We're very familiar with Access Links paratransit services, and we'd like to offer just a few considerations that FDOT might be able to help us with moving forward. Some of them had been mentioned before. I'm sorry for a repeat, but some of them have a little bit of a twist on them. And if not, I think the foot stopping really doesn't hurt. The first is integrating Lyft and Uber as options for paratransit. We know that it's less expensive than what paratransit cost. It would move considerable number of rides off the paratransit driver and vehicle load, which means the paratransit riders who need those vehicles will have better service. It's a win-win in efficacy and cost. And there are also services out there like Common Courtesy and GoGo Grandparent that can help augment the program for those seniors and those that either don't have a smartphone or aren't comfortable using the apps. So we have a complete system that we can use. And most of the time when we hear that we can't do this, regulations are quoted. And I think at this time, and Uber and Lyft as a disruptor in the transportation industry, we really need to look hard at that and make that work, because it is truly a win-win. The second I'd like to mention is Paratransit Contracting. My experience as a systems engineer, I've worked in R&D, I've worked in acquisition, I've worked for government and in industry, and I've done contracting. So one of the things I think, my recommendation, is that we should look at contracting for what we want. What we want is safe, quality, efficient, timely, dependable rides and for this community, and to give an incentive for the providers to motivate them to give us that quality ride instead of paying for the number of hours on the road or the number of miles driven. So I really think that's important. And I'm going to talk about technology in a minute, but as we automate some of these assets we need in order to become more efficient, we also need to make sure we contract for the right data so we can continue to keep the data that we need and we can be competitive in future contracts. The third and last thing I want to mention is technology. Technology matters. We truly need to take advantage of the technology out there for the benefit of not only the riders, but the transportation authorities and the providers. It'll make life easier for so many people. There's way too many trips and buses per day to manually schedule changes. There's automated solutions out there. We need to figure out how to take advantage of them and use them. I think there's many attempts, but I think as Paul said earlier, it just never trickles down to the user. And we need to make that transition of that technology into everyday use. We need some basic things like rider profiles and their email addresses. There's no way to mass mail the paratransit ridership, or at least last time I spoke to Access Links, there wasn't. I think that information, especially during times like COVID and schedule changes or policy changes, really need to be pushed. And we also need to get better feedback for the ridership, and that access would be invaluable. I think sometimes we don't want feedback because it's not fun, but I think we need to be transparent and we need to take the good, bad, and the indifferent. And I also think on Transit Authority's website, there should be a big feedback button. We shouldn't make it hard to find. We shouldn't make people work hard to give their input, and we ought to solicit it and welcome it and take it even when it's bad. I think with that, because I know that we're short of time, but thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it, and stay safe.
Hello, I'm Derek Carroll, lead member of the Florida Youth Council, a program of the Family Cafe, and it's a pleasure to speak with you this afternoon for a few minutes and share some of my experiences using and relying on public transportation. I live in Tallahassee and have been using the Transportation Disadvantage Service in my area for, I'd say, a good 12 or 13 years now due to a vision problem that prevents me from being able to drive. I could say that my overall experience using Dollaride, as it's called in my area, has been good and bad. I'll start off by saying that I'm thankful the service exists, and it's good because I'd be up the creek without it, and economically it's my best option, but it is by no means perfect. When I first started using it, they would notoriously get me to my destination late. That was frustrating, to say the least, especially once I started having internships and holding down a job. They seldom get me to work late now, but on the same token, getting to work 45 minutes early and having to sit around waiting to clock in some mornings is no fun either. The big problem I experience now, though, that they haven't quite got mastered yet, is the return trip when they come to pick me up from work. In the year I've been at my current location since my office was relocated, I'd say maybe 3 times they've actually been sitting out there in the parking lot waiting for me when I walked out. I usually wind up sitting out there, though, waiting on them anywhere from 5 minutes to, on a handful of very frustrating occasions, over an hour. This is absurd. Oh, and when I call the call center to check on it, they don't act like they give a flip. Some days, my 8-hour workday is literally turned into 11, factoring in just trying to get to work and back home. When you have the supervisor's office line and cell number saved on speed dial because they screw up so much, you know there's a problem. Major problem. She keeps saying they are anywhere from 10 to 18 drivers short, depending on what day I happen to speak with her on when they screw up. If that's the case, I think there should be that many job listings posted on the city's website until they have an adequate number of drivers. Then they make me get reapproved every 3 years just to use the service. That gets a little annoying considering my situation isn't going to change because there's no cure for my vision problem. Unless it just gets annoying, because unless they found a cure no one else knows about, my situation is not going to change. And anyways, I could go on for another hour because I have a whole list of stuff, but since I only have 4 minutes, I'll leave it at that. The transportation disadvantage service is good, but definitely needs improving, and I hope everyone at Star Metro is watching and taking notes right now, because it gets very old and causes me daily stress being forced to rely on them. Since the COVID pandemic, I've been fortunate to be able to work from home and haven't had to use them, and it's honestly been a nice break, and it's my hope that by the time they make us start coming back in the office, and I have to start relying on them again, that things will be greatly improved. I'm honestly not holding my breath, though. Again, I'm Derek Carraway with the Florida Youth Council and Family Cafe. To learn more about what we do, visit FloridaYouthCouncil.com, FamilyCafe.net, like us on Facebook. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So next up is Nikki Germain, then Paul Strobus. And I have to thank the 26 speakers that have spoken so far for staying as close to on time. I think I'm the only thing that has delayed us. Nikki, if you're on the line and can turn on your camera and are ready to go, I will turn the floor over to you. Or Paul, if you're on the line and can turn on your camera, whichever one turns on your camera first, we'll make sure that you go first. Paul, why don't you go then? Thank you so much. Nikki, we'll get back to you next.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Strobus. I'm the Director of Paratransit Services in Broward County. We provide ADA complementary and transportation disadvantaged paratransit services. You know, as a public transit professional with 20 years of experience in the paratransit industry, both here in Broward and in Boston, Massachusetts, it's very evident to me in listening to what's going on in this session, that Florida is ahead of the curve when it comes to mobility management and coordination of transportation services throughout the state. You know, the Transportation Disadvantage Program doesn't exist in other states. And so choices that customers have, individuals with disabilities have, are very limited outside of Florida. And so I want to compliment FDOT and my peers throughout the state on the level of service that we get to provide. Understanding that even exceeding a lot of the limitations, the requirements of the services that we provide, there are still a lot of limitations to the customers that use our system. And you know, my main role here in Broward County is to try to expand services where I can to ensure that we can create a system that is available when the customer needs it. Understanding that paratransit customers generally don't have the ability to be spontaneous, to have trips ready when they're ready. Everything's pre-planned. And so, you know, I ask myself as part of my local planning process, and I know that FDOT in their planning processes do the same thing. How can we break down some of those barriers with fresh solutions? One of the things I've tried to implement over the last 2 years in Broward County is to provide choice to my paratransit customers, providing them a on-demand solution with our local taxis in Broward County that have many more vehicles than my paratransit service has. and allow them to book trips on demand when they need, but also have paratransit there when they need it. We need to come up with ways to break down the complexities of our system in Florida to allow a more seamless partnership with public and private. Public government can't do it all. In a lot of systems, that's all there is the local public government. So we need to work on, at the state level, things like insurance. Private entities that don't operate 24 hours a day, but have to pay exorbitant insurance costs to operate vehicles and passenger transportation systems is unsustainable for small companies. There's many people out there that would love to become part of an overall system to provide accessible transportation, but they don't have the capital to be able to provide it. Better education on the 5310 FTA grant program that provides capital funding for seniors, disabled transportation programs is key. And so as we move forward, you know, I hope that we can expand those programs to provide an ability for public agencies like myself to partner with not just large transportation companies, but also those smaller entrepreneurial companies or transportation network companies, if they're willing to work with us and share information, which has been a problem with some of the TNCs up to this point. But if the capital funding's there and it's available and the local governments can work with them, I think we can create a hybrid transportation system that will do what we hope, and that's to allow day-to-day activities, and not just medical, but everything, as we've talked about, whether it's employment, social, education, that they can decide, like anybody that may have a car in their driveway or have, you know, able to get on a public bus, they can decide to transport whenever they want. And so I thank you for the opportunity to provide my comments on a future transportation system that values mobility for all throughout our state. Thank you.
Paul, thank you so much, and particularly on short notice. I just called Paul the other day and he stepped right up. Thank you so much. So I'm going to try Nikki again. I know that I think you tried to dial in. If you're available, go ahead and speak up and I'll know that your voice works. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next presenter. Okay. Nikki, keep trying and we will try one more time. I'm amazed that we have gone 2 hours on Zoom with so little problems. Nikki, if you'll just let us know when you're on, we will come to you if possible. We'll go to Joey Chica, and then Nikki, if you're available, we'll end the program with you and turn it back over to Allison Stetner after that.
Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Chica. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on a topic that is very personal to me. As a blind person, accessible transportation is critical to my independence. When we talk about transportation and accessibility within transportation, we focus primarily on how do we make this transportation accessible. And a lot of times it's easy to lose sight of efficiency. So that's something I want to take a moment or two to just touch upon. I'll give you an example. We can make the most accessible horse and carriage in the world, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to take a horse and carriage to get somewhere because it's just not efficient. So one of the opportunities I think that we have, and especially in the current situation that we're in, is to increase our efficiency when it comes to our transportation. The transportation industry as a whole is really undergoing a monumentous transition from where we come from to where we're going, specifically in two areas that I'd want to touch upon. The first is autonomous vehicles. I think autonomy and self-driving really pose a great opportunity for accessibility, but there are two pivotal steps that we need to cross in order to get to where we want to be and how we can ultimately, again, achieve our goal here, which is accessible transportation and efficient accessible transportation. The first hurdle that we need to overcome is, of course, the technology behind autonomy, and a lot of that from what we're discussing now is maybe something that we can influence, but definitely something that we can have a positive effect on by improving infrastructure and providing assistance in that direction. And the second, and one that we really have more control over, is legislation. Really getting the discussion rolling on how can we make this better? How can we make this available to people with disabilities so that when it does come, we're not spending another 10 years after we have autonomous vehicles getting it so that now it's accessible to people who are blind, in my case, or who have other disabilities that can benefit from the technology. And the second and more present opportunity I think that we have to improve in this field is with ride-sharing services and the way that we use them currently. So there's a reason why two companies are household names in multinational billion-dollar corporations, and it's because they work and because they're efficient. A lot of times what happens is, as a blind person, is if you go to use transportation, it may be very accessible in a public bus or a metro rail, but at the end of the day, you don't end up where you ultimately need to go, and you need to use walking or then use a ride-sharing service or some other form of transportation that then may not be so accessible. So I say, if you can't beat them, join them, and creating some initiatives in Florida that would allow to take advantage of those opportunities that exist and collaborate rather than trying to compete, to make it possible to utilize these services that are ultimately efficient and they're working, and that's why people are using them. So really bridging that gap so that people with disabilities and who need access to efficient transportation can rely on something that we know is efficient and that we know works. So autonomy and collaboration with ride sharing, I think, are the two ways that we can definitely improve both short-term and long-term in this industry. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think, Nikki, we're going to try one more time to see if we can access your mic. Are you there? Okay. Then I'm going to turn to Director Stetner, and if you're available, you and I can have a quick conversation for some wrap-up points. There are a number of public comments that have been submitted on the chat. There are more comments that can be submitted afterwards if folks will send us messages to transportation@abletrust.org. I think I appreciate you offering us the opportunity to provide this, and I know that the Florida Transportation Plan continues to take input and feedback as we work through the planning process. Director, I know that we've gone for a little bit more than 2 hours.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I found this really impactful conversation. I think we really learned a lot through it. We have been taking copious notes and responding to the questions in the chat. And thankfully we have the recording too, so we can go back in and do a little deeper dive. I think we heard a lot of themes throughout some of the presentations, and thank you for all of your perseverance and resilience and working with us. It is a work in process, and we want to be better. So though that input that you gave us today is going to help us be better. And I think that's important, that we want to all grow and learn and partner with you. But I heard a lot about the need for more options and how much time it takes for everyone to make these travel decisions, and that how much that is disruptive to your life, that there's a lot of optimism in the technology that can help enhance our journey finding, make it easier for payment systems, and making mode choice a little bit easier to come by. I heard safety throughout most of the presentations today, and need for safe systems that are accessible as well, and safe and equitable, and access was one of those common themes. We need to have more education on available resources and services so that we can connect back to the users. And that this still remains to be a barrier. Access continues to be a barrier. ADA continues to be a barrier. And the department is committed that on every project that we improve our system for all users, not just vehicles, but everyone, and every component is important to our system. So I wanted to say that I heard some of that. I want to talk a little bit, just briefly, because funding is kind of that elephant in the room, and how can we get more funding and more alignment to resources. And that is something that I think everyone struggles with. And it's going to end up being partnerships, working with local communities, working with you as advocates in the community, and then making sure we align our resources to our vision. And it's going to take every project and every ounce of our strength to continue to work us there. But I just want to say, from my personal perspective, I learned a lot more about the barriers that you experience every single day. And that personally will make me a better planner and hopefully a better person. So, so thank you for letting us have this opportunity today and allowing us to be here.
Director, having served on past Florida transportation planning processes, I know how open you are to the input, and it's not necessarily easy, but the humility that you and your team are approaching this with, listening today, sharing time with us at the Able Trust and all the partners that spoke today, I greatly appreciate that. I know that there is a long way to go, and the FTP is not the budget document. It is not the individual, local, regional planning document, but it is the vision for the state, and the work that you and your team do on it is absolutely essential. So thank you so much.
And if there's any unanswered questions, and we'll continue to get the feedback from you that's going on online as well, so that we can respond to questions and work with you to make sure that everyone has a satisfactory response.
Thank you so much, Director. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to, stay on the line a little bit longer. As you heard, some of the folks for Department of Transportation will stay on and listen to the questions. If for the few hundred of you that are still on, you can submit comments through the chat feature, and we will capture all this. This transcript is being made available directly to the Department of Transportation Florida Transportation Plan document. I will let you know that it's been a pleasure on behalf of the Able Trust to do this. I know that it is not a simple thing to manage so many people in so little times. I want to thank my good friend Jeff Douglas, who told me he did all the cussing in the background for me, and I appreciate that as well. If there are additional comments that you would like to share, I want to encourage you to let us know. If you want to find out more about the Florida Transportation Plan, you can go to the www.floridatransportationplan.com. This event has been made possible by the Able Trust, and we look forward to working with you and so many other partners. But there are more stories that we know that are out there and we can capture. As a matter of fact, there have been folks that have been emailing me and texting me throughout this process, not just to give me encouragement to keep going on, but sending us notes. All of those will become part of the record that we will turn in. If you will post your story, whether it's a video or a message, and use the hashtag AbleTrust, that's hashtag AbleTrust, we'll capture it and forward it to the FTP Planning Committee. We will also improve our spelling. I noticed that I misspelled hashtag there. So the other option, if you would prefer not to use social media but still want to submit comments, you can use transportation@abletrust.org. That's the word transportation@abletrust.org. You can continue to post to the chat. We'll probably keep the lines open for just a few more minutes and continue to allow those testimonies. You will have noticed that there were a number of folks that submitted information before the event, and we added those to that record as well. Thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for asking your questions. I do want to highlight that everything that was expressed today came from somebody's experience. Does not necessarily represent the or reflect the official policy or positions. But there are a number of great storylines that we will use to build future plans. We will leave the lines open and keep this telecast running for just a few more minutes. And thank you so much for participating in this. If you would like to reach us directly, you can reach us at info@abletrust.org. And I'll also let you know that we will post this video or the link to the video at abletrust.org. So the entire 2 hours and 15 minutes of the presentation I know that Facebook Live had its glitches as it started. And when I say glitches, it means that human error on my part, but you can watch right from the beginning. We will also be sharing the videos that have been submitted, capturing the comments that have been submitted by other individuals throughout this presentation. And we certainly hope that you will join us in sharing information online. You can again use hashtag AbleTrust or email us at transportation@abletrust.org. Thank you for joining us today in this important conversation, and we look forward to working with you as we create a more accessible transportation future for this great state of Florida. Thank you.